Welcome everyone to Junos With Official. Gonna check out this video that you guys have made a request. This one is actually the most deadliest job in America. Thank you for requesting this video. Subscribe, like, and share if you want me to react. Leave a comment down below, okay? Thank you. Let's go and check out this one.
When the president dies, who becomes the president? Well, the Constitution
vice president
says what happens next is the vice president assumes the powers and duties of the office. Simple enough, but one backup president is none backup president. So what happens next? The Constitution left this question as homework for the new Congress. Important homework, yes. Due date, no. So Congress sort of worked on succession with
next. I thought they just have a new election.
But mostly procrastinated on properly finishing for 200 years, finally turning in the 25th Amendment. Better late than never, though. In the meantime, a president had died in office not once, not twice, not thrice, not quadrice, not quintice, not hexice, nor septice, but octagonalice. For natural causes, for assassinations. It was Garfield and McKinley. This survival record was only 80%, and even counting to today, the president is technically the most deadly job in America. But the odds are, when you become president, you must roll the celestial 2d6, and if you roll a 7, you'll die in office.
Oh boy.
Don't spend a lot of time in Vegas with those odds. So the Veep becomes the Peep and picks a new Veep who must be confirmed by a majority vote of both houses of Congress. If this happens quickly, then hunky-dory. Everything is reset. But getting a VP nominee approved might take some time, during which the former VP, who is now the president, who is not immortal, must cast the dice and could roll a 7. The office of the vice president has been vacant for more than a baker's dozen of times in United States history, which, given the historical state of Congress's homework at the time, put the peaceful transfer of power in a precarious position. For example, the first time a president died in office, the 9th by the way, didn't even make it to double digits, no one knew what should happen. The then VP just grabbed a judge to administer the oath of the presidency to become number 10, and spent the rest of his term arguing with Congress and the nation about if he was really the president or the acting president. Which seems a little, who cares, what's the difference? But there is the office of the president and there are the powers and duties of the office, which are not quite the same thing. See, it's not just death that can remove a president. A president can resign, a president can be impeached, and a president can be enabled to discharge the powers and duties of the office. That's true. This last enable is from the Constitution, which makes no attempt to define what enable means. A president can volunteer themselves to be enable, for example, during physical illness, upon which they don't leave the office, but the VP gets the powers and duties of the office and becomes acting president. This, on a tiny scale, has happened a few times when the president has undergone non-trivial surgery. A reason for this being to ensure nuclear weapons command and control is maintained at all times. The power button. But also you don't get any ideas. I'm still the president. However, I'm still a president. As soon as this is over, and it will, assuming death doesn't make a bedside visit. Anyway, inability is a subjective sliding scale. A president could be perceived as mentally unable by some, or become so mentally unable as to be unable to declare themselves unable, or become physically unable yet simply refuse to declare it. Here, the 25th Amendment allows for the vice president to perform a kind of gentle coup. Okay, the president has 15 top-level advisors we will get to later. If the VP can get a majority of advisors to state in writing the president is unable, the VP gets the powers and duties of the office. The president can challenge this, getting a moment to try and consolidate keys to power, but if the VP and advisors reaffirm the president is indeed unable, and not able to do it, president, and a 21-day countdown clock begins. What happens next is up to Congress. If they do nothing, when the clock runs out, presidential power returns to the president. But if within the 21 days Congress votes with a 2/3 majority that the president is unable, then the vice president is permanently acting president. And how can we permanently acting president? Obviously, this would be a real delicate maneuver. So that means the president was to be getting paid like the president and the vice president advisors for any reason, as long as the president holds the powers and duties of the office. So getting advisors on board would be challenging. Case in point, in 1919, the president suffered a stroke and was mostly blinded and partly paralyzed. Don't worry, no big deal. The president just doesn't want to talk to the public or meet with his VP or consult with his advisors or leave the White House at all for a year and a half. And during this time, there was no need for the VP to declare the president unable. But there might be a way around the VP. The 25th has this line about Congress appointing like its own committee to determine the president unable. But the way it's worded it is a little unclear. Does it mean
Typical.
the VP and advisors or Congress committee determine inability? Or does
Typical.
it mean the VP and advisors or Congress committee? If the
Typical.
latter interpretation, that means Congress alone has the power to appoint a committee with the power to remove the power of the president unilaterally.
Power,
But as
power.
always with unclear interpretations, were they to happen for realsies, someone might want to weigh in on it. So those are the 4 or 5 ways a president can
Oh,
get removed
shit.
from office. But
That's
one of them is
amazing.
clearly the most popular, so let's
Yeah.
talk about what the Finnish congressional homework says about succession. First, the doubt that began with President 10 is dispelled by the 25th. When the president dies, the vice president becomes the president.
Yes.
In able equals VP acting president, dead equals VP president. But if both the president and the vice
Oh,
roll
shoot.
7s, the order of succession is set. And first up
Ooh.
is the speaker, who is the elected leader from within the House of Representatives.
Wow.
And next is the president pro tempore of the Senate, who is the longest serving senator. Not automatically, but elected by tradition. See, that's a funny thing to mention now. I'm sure it won't matter later. Senators
Oh,
tend
boy.
to serve for a long time, so
Yeah,
the president
tell
pro
us.
tempore is often in their 80s, with the record holder being 98. Just worth noting, it was
Wow.
up to Congress to set succession order, and Congress just so happened to pick the 2 most powerful members of Congress as next in line from the VP. After Congress, succession moves to the cabinet. These are the advisors
Wow.
mentioned before. Each here has the title of secretary and are secretary of a same-name department. Explaining
Yeah.
each in detail would take too long because it would be to explain the entire structure of the executive branch, which is enormous.
Another video.
And some of their names give you the idea, but some of them don't. For example, number 4 in line, the Secretary of State, who runs the Department of State, which has nothing to do with the states, but everything outside the states. The Secretary of State is first in the cabinet because managing the foreign relations of the federal government is a pretty big deal.
Yeah,
It requires
important.
you to be on at least decent speaking terms with other countries.
True.
A good thing should say you need their support during a sudden transition of power. The
Yeah.
Secretary of State is first among the founding 4 appointed by the first president. The others, Secretary of Treasury, Secretary of War, and Secretary of Justice.
Secretary of
Fancy Pants
War?
here wants to be called the Attorney General, but just so happens to be in charge of the Department of Justice. So the oldest departments have their secretaries in 4, 5, 6, 7 order of succession. Now, from here, Congress decided the rest should continue on seniority, not for people, but departments, which has led to an interesting order. Secretary of the Interior is next up because in the 1800s, young America realized she had a lot of interior land to manage and created the Department of the Interior to manage the land and the Indians on the land. No, there's no time.
Oh,
and
boy.
land needs to be farmed and managed, so the Department
shit,
of
that's a
Agriculture.
lot.
And then in 1900s Part 1, America wanted to develop commerce and labor, and Part 2, Health and Human Services, and Housing and Urban Development, and right, transportation between those urban developments, and energy for those developments, and overseeing nuclear weapons. There
That
really
is
isn't
a
time.
lot.
And education. Meanwhile, that Department of War, renamed Department of Defense, created veterans, and so also the
Ooh.
Department of Veterans Affairs. All done until
Wow.
2001, Department of Homeland Security.
Jeez, that's a
more
lot.
Historical happenstance order, not legislators sat down and thought it through order. Not to cast shade on the Secretary of Education, but if something has happened where the first 15 backups are out of order, that sounds a lot like a Homeland Security issue. In
Oh,
addition
boy.
to the debatable order, for everyone below VP, if their spot in succession comes up, they are required to resign their current position to become, wait for it, acting president.
Acting!
Most likely serving the rest of the president's term.
Okay.
Why most likely? Well, one
Election.
of Congress's homework attempts raises an issue called bumping with this paragraph, saying
Bumping.
the acting president serves the rest of the term unless a prior entitled individual is able to. Oh, it's
Oh,
another
gosh.
interpretation problem. This does, or doesn't, mean new appointees take priority and bump
First jo-
those
did on the
lower
job.
on the list out of the office instantly. Here's the worst
Instantly.
case interpretation and scenario.
Uh-huh.
Imagine while Congress is on recess, the President, VP, both leaders of Congress, and the Secretary of State all roll 7s. The Secretary of Treasury becomes acting president and appoints a new Secretary of State, who is higher on the list, bumping the acting Treasurer President off, who is now unemployed, at least until reconfirmed. And of course, a new Secretary of State is needed post-haste.
Jeez,
Confirmed.
man.
Back from recess, the Senate elects a new President pro tempore, who is higher on the list and then must resign to become acting president, bumping the current acting president, who was the Secretary of State but is now just unemployed. And then the House elects their new speaker, bump again. While there is
So the
debate
same
about
set
bumping
keep-
constitutionality, the point is it's still President 10 all over again.
Yeah, the
Uncertainty
same-
is the whole problem. After a government decapitation, just the potential of rapid-fire changes in power is exactly what you don't want to be even debatable when nuclear command and control is on the table in what would obviously be trying times. So maybe a couple more revisions on that homework are due, but whatever. This is the current order, and since the 1950s, for no particular reason, it's been policy to never let all of these people in a room together at once. So when you're watching the next State of the Union address, if you want something to occupy your mind during all the clapping, you can play Guess Who's the Designated Survivor, knocking down successors as you spot them to figure out who isn't there, secreted away in a secure location to be the final backup.
In case something happens. That is amazing. Wow. That is absolutely amazing. The American presidency office is very vast. So much. Of course, I don't live in the US or affiliated with the US political system, so I'm not quite versed in this area. However, I do understand what they're saying. It's just that I've always watched videos like real election time, and I'm wondering, why don't we often see very young people in the whole political arena? Very young persons, meaning 20 something. And I have observed that there's a lot of mature, experienced, elder persons who generally would be the time to retire, but they're still pushing for that power. And I've always wondered why, or why don't they retire? But I guess it's because of how it's set up, that they having such senior age or senior knowledge or vast knowledge and this sort of things, they have to remain till, you know, the fat lady sings. Of course, thank you for your questions, video. Subscribe, like, and share if you want me to react. Of course, leave a comments below. Let me know what you think of this reaction, okay? Thank you so very much. Bye, guys.